Today we're going to share 5 tips to become more fundable from the Business Funding Formula book. So if you want to always be fundable, make sure you can access capital at any time, at any place as an entrepreneur. Then let's lock in. All right, my friends. So there are 5 tips to becoming fundable. We're going to go over those, but let's just talk about why this even matters, right? Because you never know when you're going to need to access money, funding, capital. And it could be for business reasons, it could be for personal. But as a business owner and entrepreneur, like, you never know what emergency is going to happen where you're going to need to access capital. So, I mean, obviously, one of the things you want to do is make sure you have access to, business credit cards, business lines of credit, and have those available. So in emergency, you can break glass and access them. Or with a really big opportunity, same thing, you can access that money quickly. But even then, there are just times where you need more money, or you need a specific type of financing, or you need to have good credit for whatever reason as an entrepreneur and a business owner. And so those are important things. Obviously, the other thing that happens is from a personal standpoint, right? Your car gets totaled, your car gets it stops working. You need to get a new car loan. Then you've got to be fundable for that. And if you're not, all of a sudden you're paying a higher interest rate. Let's talk about these 5 tips that it takes to become fundable at all times and all places as an entrepreneur business owner. So tip number 1, you must monitor your credit and your financials every single week. I have an entire class about this, a master class at cashflowsecrets.com. And one of the important factors we talk about in that class is this example, right? If you are married, you have a husband, wife, spouse, partner, well, guess what? If you want that marriage to last and get better, you better be doing date night, just you, your spouse, partner, nobody else, no friends, no kids, no family, just you two, so that you can work on that relationship and strengthen it and make it better week after week. If you don't, I promise, your marriage will eventually fail. The odds are just, it's tough enough to be married, and if you're not working at it, you're growing farther apart. And the same thing happens in what we call a weekly money date, right? You have to have a weekly money date as an entrepreneur business owner. So again, that tip 1 is monitor all this stuff every week. Part of that money date, you should log into Experian.com. You should see what your credit profile looks like. Is there something misreporting there? Is there some, there's a lot of, there was a big fraud thing that came out that I learned about just today, where everybody's social security numbers are floating out in the open, and so people might be applying for new credit for you. So those are things you've got to monitor your credit. You've got to make sure that credit is staying high. And then the financials, right? How are the business financials doing? How are the personal financials doing? Are you losing money in the business currently? Or is your cash flow not working? If it's not, then go check out that masterclass. We got a free book for you. So number 1 is monitor your credit, monitor your financials, do a weekly money date, invest in that, and good things will happen. Tip number 2 is you got to keep those personal cards paid down. Part of the credit situation is you got to keep the credit score high. And so to always be fundable, you need to pay down those card balances, and specifically we're talking about personal cards. If you keep a higher balance on a business card here and there, that's not going to necessarily impact you because those are reporting to business, unless, of course, you have a Capital One business card, which does report to personal. So you probably should look at getting different business credit cards other than Capital One, and hopefully you can tap a 0% interest rate and get cashback rewards. So again, tip number 2, keep your credit cards paid down at least below 45% of the limit. If you can get them below 30% of the limit, I got a $10,000 card, $4,500 or less on the balance. If I have a $10,000 card and I can get below $3,000 on the balance, then that's going to help me. And you have to know when those cards report. You'll see an update or updated date on your credit report, Experian.com. Check that out. That's a great way to monitor that. Tip number 3, build up cash reserves. One of the quickest ways to get approvals is when you have a lot of money in the bank. A few years ago when I was buying some Airbnb properties, these were not cheap properties. They were big mortgages. You had to jump through all the hoops. And it's still difficult to get a mortgage these days, especially if you're an entrepreneur and a business owner. But because there was a decent amount of capital in the bank account, it made it significantly easier to qualify for those mortgages and be fundable in that situation, get the lowest interest rates. Thank goodness we got them before the rates jumped up higher. So we've talked about, again, monitor things on a weekly basis, keep your personal cards paid down, build up cash reserves, because nothing makes a lender happier than seeing money in the bank. And number 4, is spend less than your business earns, and for heaven's sake, spend less than you earn personally. Nothing destroys your credibility more than when you are spending more. And I know, goodness gracious, we're talking about the U.S. government, who's so damn good at always spending more than it takes in. You can't be spending more than you're bringing in. Cash flow is king. So that's from a business perspective, from a personal perspective, same thing. You've got to make sure you get that budget under control and that you're spending less than you are bringing in. And then, obviously, you have to be progressing. Life is about growth and giving. If you're not growing your income, then that's going to be a problem. So make sure you're growing your income. And last but not least, keep learning, right? Get mentors, read the books, listen to the podcasts, spend the time. The financial game, the money game, the entrepreneurship game, it's about continuously getting better, learning. So keep learning from those who are more successful than you. How do they manage their business and personal finances? Those are the tips that it's going to take to become fundable. So again, to review, 5 tips to becoming fundable. Monitor your credit and financial on a weekly basis, what we call a money date. Keep financial cards paid down as step 2. Tip 3, build up cash reserves. Tip 4, spend less than you bring in your business or personally. And last but not least, keep on learning. Those are your 5 tips to being fundable always. Come on back, share this with other entrepreneurs, and let's win in 2024.